Welcome into 2-for-1 Drafts. I'm Austin Gayle here with Mike Renner, the Wednesday edition of 2-for-1 Drafts. Man, we have an awesome show prep for you guys. We interviewed new PFF analyst Seth Galina, a quarterback guru. He goes in detail on the top quarterbacks in the class, including comparing Justin Herbert to pretty much an awful quarterback prospect. I mean, he talked about him very poorly. That was a fantastic interview to hear Seth's legit, honest takes on this quarterback class. He compared Justin Herbert to Jacob Eason in the interview, which I thought was very interesting and likened to. We also interviewed Dane Brugler of The Athletic. He's fresh off of writing up a 7-round mock draft that includes CeeDee Lamb and Henry Ruggs going ahead of Jerry Jeudy, Christian Fulton, Xavier McKinney falling out of the first round. A lot of interesting insight from Dane on that. And we're also...
Man, you know what? Now you bring that up, I'm so sad I didn't ask him how long it took him to put that together. Because I know my 3-round mock, I think it took me longer than the actual first 3 rounds take. It took me forever to put that together. That 7-rounder, I would definitely forget a half dozen players that are third and fourth rounders.
Yeah. I mean, Dane also writes The Beast, his version of the draft guide that is absolutely fantastic. I would encourage you all to subscribe to The Athletic and download that thing because it is a beast, exactly that. And we also got to bring this up. I brought this up on the Monday podcast, but maybe a little bit late in the show, but we are doing an Edge subscription giveaway. We will give you an Edge monthly subscription or 10 randomly selected people an Edge monthly subscription if you email me at austin.gale@pff.com with a screenshot of your review on the podcast after April 12th that includes the name of your favorite prospect in this class. That's all you have to do to enter. We only have about 15 entries so far, so there's a lot of people going to be getting a draft guide. It's not going to be that hard to randomly select. Send in that email, send in that screenshot to get access to the Edge monthly product here at PFF, which gives you access to the draft guide, player grades, all this exciting stuff for a month. All right, without further ado, only one segment before the interviews, and it's the pub crawl, baby. You ready to rock?
Let's go.
All right, first thing here. Brandt is reporting that the Dolphins might pass on a quarterback in the first round altogether. What's your take on this? Is this the right move for the Dolphins?
So that was kind of my quarterback take of I think the top 6 plays out in the Chargers trade up for Tua Tagovailoa, and the Dolphins don't think that they need to pigeonhole themselves into a guy who's obviously flawed in Justin Herbert. Is my take of how sort of cooler heads will prevail at the quarterback position here, and I can get on board with it. It's not a good roster that they have there. If they have to trade up to draft a quarterback, they're giving up, spots that need to be filled on that roster. They're giving up, maybe protection for whoever is they do draft behind center. So I honestly, with that roster right now, that's kind of what I would do. I would do that, and I would roll with Josh Rosen, not let Ryan Fitzpatrick win me too many games next year.
I'm with you. And I said this on the 2-minute drill yesterday, saying that I'm not necessarily against them trading down, maybe not collecting more picks in this class, but future first round picks in next year, because set yourself up for this next year, because this roster is not ready. It's not ready to compete in 2020, regardless of the quarterback you select after Joe Burrow. You don't have to force a Tua Tagovailoa with injury risk. You don't have to force these high risk, high reward Jordan Love, Justin Herbert type of prospects in this class. You can just collect very good players with the 3 first round picks you have this year, and then maybe set yourself up for the future to grab Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, and some additional picks if you do trade down in the first round. I'm all about this, Brandt. It's one of the first times that the guy that blocked you, you're actually siding with.
You should. They should call up the Saints if they want a 2021 first rounder.
There you go. Perfect. I know you said 95% chance of
95, dude. Bet money right now. Their 2021 first or second rounder is gone by.
I've been asked this a lot. I've been asked this a lot about teams like the Packers, Saints, Falcons. Should they trade up to try and grab a wide receiver? Should they trade up to get their favorite offensive tackle? And I keep telling them this: if you're not trading up for a quarterback, it's going to be so difficult for you to recoup that value on a different position when you're trading multiple picks, multiple maybe future first rounders, future second round picks to get a player at that position, wide receiver or offensive tackle, especially in a class where it's very loaded at both positions at offensive tackle and wide receiver. I can't get on board with it, but if you're a smart team looking to trade down and can convince a team like the Saints, Falcons, etc., to trade up, I'm all for it. And I think the Dolphins should be a part of that group. All right, moving forward here. There's also some rumors that Justin Herbert will be going ahead of Tua Tagovailoa in this upcoming draft. It's been Tua over Herbert for quite some time now. Betting markets had 2/3 chance Tua Tagovailoa goes ahead of Herbert. Now it's flipped. Herbert going ahead of Tua Tagovailoa, 2/3 chance. Also, Dane Brugler has Herbert going ahead of Tua in his latest mock draft. What's your opinion of that?
See, my opinion of the whole, Herbert might go over is that's like the classic smoke screen that teams are going to be putting out. They like Herbert, or teams are putting out that, hey, they're really worried about Tua's injury. Like everyone says, don't believe what you hear this time of year. That is the perfect sort of, devaluing, not having to give up as much in the trade sort of market. If you are the Dolphins, if you are the Chargers, you're putting out as much bad information about Tua as you can right now, if that's who you really want. And I had to laugh about the report about his, Tua's broken wrist came from the Miami Herald. Like that, where do you think they got it from? Where do you think their source existed that they got this information? And who would have leaked that unless they wanted that information to get out there? So to me, I think it's still more smoke than anything else.
All right. Is there smoke in this? Falcons potentially wanting to trade up. I saw that Bleacher Report update. Dane's talked about it as well. But Falcons trading up for a cornerback, specifically C.J. Henderson of Florida, maybe trading up with the Jacksonville Jaguars to 9 to make sure they land that super athletic cornerback out of Florida.
No, I don't think that is at all because of, how big a need cornerback is there, how willing they've been in the past, and almost hitting on Julio Jones right at the beginning of Thomas Dimitrov's tenure. I think that was Thomas Dimitrov that made that trade right at the beginning of his tenure. Almost makes your mind a little bit more, makes you think that that's what you're going to get every time, even though that's kind of the outlier in terms of trading up over the course of the history of the NFL draft. So obviously we're not going to get on board with that. Just take the best corner that's there if you really do want a corner, but I think they will, because I think they're going to have to jump some teams there, maybe maybe Vegas, maybe the Jets if they do want a corner, maybe the Broncos as well. So I could see them definitely moving up if they want a cornerback in this class. A few teams that I could see moving up are them, Denver, obviously New Orleans. They're going to move up in this first round. I could see all those teams trying to make a play to get up a little higher in this draft. Probably Tampa Bay as well if the tackles start to run.
Another trade-up scenario is the Denver Broncos trading up ahead of, let's say, the Las Vegas Raiders to make sure they get the receiver they want. Do not sit there and let the Raiders and the San Francisco 49ers take the two best receivers off the board and they kind of get whoever's left. I think the Broncos, there's a good chance, and we talked about this with some others in the the draft space here, that the Broncos want to trade up and go grab their receiver, maybe Henry Ruggs. It's been said all offseason that the Denver Broncos want to add speed opposite of Cortland Sutton for 2020. What's your take on that? Is that a smart move for the Broncos to potentially trade up from 15 to 11 to get ahead of the Raiders and draft their favorite receiver?
I mean, obviously it depends on how much you give up, but I do not believe it's a smart move. I don't think there's that big a difference. If you want a deep threat in this class, I don't think there's that big a difference between Henry Ruggs and Jalen Reagor. If you want a complete number one type of wide receiver, I think CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy will still be on the board there for you. I don't think you're going to see this big run. Oh, wow. So maybe if you do, maybe there will be, but then, draft the next guy. It's a loaded wide receiver class. Do not, under any circumstances, trade up to go get one in this class. That is not a good use of draft picks when it's that much talent available. It just reminds me of when, the Bills back in 2004 or 2014 traded up for Sammy Watkins, gave up a future first rounder. They could have gotten Odell Beckham. They could have gotten Brandon Cooks. They could have gotten Devontae Adams, Allen Robinson, where they picked. But they wanted to go get Sammy Watkins because they were sure, they knew he was the missing piece for their offense.
Yeah, I can't get on board with it either for the same reasons I kind of outlined earlier, and that trading up for position that isn't the quarterback position, you rarely recoup that value. The Julio Jones trade is one of very few trades for a non-quarterback that really panned out. So I'm interested to see if that actually runs true. And I think it puts the Jets in a very good position, a Jets team with a very bad roster in a position to potentially trade down and allocate more draft capital capital to build around Sam Darnold. I like that move for the New York Jets if they are indeed the trading partner with the Denver Broncos. Last thing here before we get to the interviews, there are some rumors that the Cleveland Browns want to get out of the number 10 overall pick. Get out of there, not take like an Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, or Jedrick Wills, but instead trade down further in the draft and maybe scoop up Ezra Cleveland of Boise State, still fill that offensive tackle need. It's been reported for a while now that they love Ezra Cleveland, have done a ton of work on the Boise State product. What's your opinion of the Browns trading back and potentially targeting Cleveland at the back end of the first round?
Again, get on the phone with the Saints. Javon Kinlaw or Derek Brown are still on the board. I'm sure the Saints would love either of those guys. Think that's
if
the
Saints
piece.
Trade up for Derek Brown, I will lose it.
It's going to happen. I mean, like I said, 95% chance. I have no inside info. I just have followed the Saints very closely in their draft history. They trade up, and they're going to draft a guy who's going to be a good player. He's not going to be the missing piece, as we've seen in their past 2 trade ups. It's not going to necessarily be the one guy that puts them over the edge because rookies just struggle, but they're still going to do it anyways. So I think it's likely that the Browns do trade down. I can't get on board, though, with passing over an Andrew Thomas there to trade down, even if you're accruing draft capital. Like, he's good. Like, he's obviously our top tackle prospect, and I think he's like NFL ready. After that top 4, unless you trade down and still get Josh Jones, like, I don't think they're NFL ready. I don't think Ezra Cleveland, like, he's a athletic project at this point. I don't think he's stepping in right away and helping you. And I do believe you really do need some help there. That's going to be right away, helping you right out the gate. So, I don't know. I think they will probably trade down, though. And that's just the analytical approach says, hey, trade down. And I'm not going to argue too hard with it.
I talked to Curtis Weaver, Ezra Cleveland's former teammate at Boise State, and I'll tell you this, Mike, he's got a first-round grade on Ezra Cleveland. Says he's got the best feet in the class. Take that as you will. Both those guys are very good friends.
That will be. I mean, he went up against them every day in practice. I
asked him, and he wouldn't tell me. But I asked him, what moves would you use to beat Ezra Cleveland? He says, I'm not going to do that, but I'll say you have to. He said you have to go in the bag to beat Ezra Cleveland. You have to look at the toolbox to beat him. You're not going to beat him with pure speed or a pure bull rush. You have to use tools. You have to use pass rush moves. That interview with Curtis Weaver should air on the Friday edition of 2-for-1 Drafts. For now, we are going to pivot for the 2 interviews we had with Seth Galina, new PFF analyst, and Dane Brugler. We'll start with Dane, then pivot to Seth Brugler. But before we let you go, it's going to let you know this again. Draft guide giveaway. We are giving an Edge monthly subscription to 10 randomly selected people that email me a screenshot of their podcast review after April 12th that includes the name of your favorite prospect in this class. Please do that, and let's give out some Edge annuals. I mean, let's give out some Edge monthly subscriptions. We're excited to do it. Mike, anything to add before we jump to the interviews?
Nope. Get 2 good interviews, though. You definitely stay tuned for these interviews.
Yep, fantastic stuff from both Dane and Seth. Here we go. Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is The Athletic's Dane Brugler, a friend of the pod. We've had him on before. Dane, it's great to have you on.
I'll appreciate it. Always enjoy it, guys.
Well, I got to get right into this, man. You published a draft guide, and PFF, Renner likes to say his draft guide's awesome, the best in the biz. But this thing, man, the beast that you've given to The Athletic that you can get with an Athletic subscription is absolutely fantastic. Super rich in text, and data, all this stuff. I really, really do appreciate the insight in that thing. Talk to us about all the work that goes into your draft guide.
No, and look, there are plenty of really good draft guides out there. I know the one that you guys do at PFF is awesome. And the one that I do is, I try to make it as readable as possible, as detailed as possible. It's just, you try to put as much info as you can in there, try to give the readers, even if they don't know anything about the player, the best chance to understand who that player is after reading the report, not only just strengths, weaknesses, what they did on the field, but their background information, where they come from, their journey, some of the metrics, some of the production. So, you just try to paint a picture for the reader. And so, try to do that with the draft guide. It's a year-round thing for me. And so if you're interested in the NFL draft at all, I promise you there's a 0% chance you'll be disappointed with the draft guide. And the only way to get it is through The Athletic. If you're a subscriber, it's part of your subscription. So hopefully people check it out.
Oh, I love it. I love the no frills aspect. You go right to it, right to the analysis. No big, player images or anything that we have in ours. Just You have the analysis there. And it's, for me, that's a dream. That's all I really care about. So I love that aspect. What I want to know, kind of as a guy who, does his own guide to some degree, or does some of his own analysis, is when do you put like pen to paper on this? How long does this process end up taking you to build this guide?
For me, it's a 10-month process. Started June 1st every year. And I know from me personally speaking, I'm not like a professional team where I've got a whole staff working for me doing these things. So it just takes a lot of time, and, it's a lot of research, talking to scouts, talking to these players, just throughout the football season. I remember talking to Adam Troutman back in September and learning about how he never caught a football in a game until he was a redshirt freshman at Dayton. He was a quarterback his entire life. And so, you just learn these little things. And then, throughout the process, you make tweaks to your these reports. You learn more about them at the Senior Bowl, the Combine. It's a living document. And the worst thing I think is just knowing when to cut it off, because there's always another guy you can watch. There's always another tape you can watch. It's just impossible to fully get everything, but you try to look under every rock and do as much info as you can. And so, hopefully this guide shows that.
All right, I want to get into also, in addition to the Beast, I'm sure you put a ton of work and effort into your 7-round mock draft that you released for The Athletic. And I think that's something that stands out for me, and something that's kind of topical right now is the idea of Justin Herbert, the Oregon quarterback, going ahead of Tua Tagovailoa in the top 5 of the NFL draft. You see now that betting odds have shifted from 2/3 chance Tua Tagovailoa goes first ahead of Justin Herbert, and now to 2/3 chance Herbert goes ahead of Tua. What are you hearing there, and what's your thought process there, having Herbert go ahead of Tua?
Yeah, and I remember leaving Indianapolis for the Combine beginning of March, and I remember tweeting that I would not be surprised at all if Justin Herbert is the second quarterback drafted, just because talking to teams at the Combine, it was the same type of response. We're cautiously optimistic, like, he did okay, and there were no teams that definitely said or definitively said that we feel great, about Tua's medicals. We feel like, we're willing to take that chance. No worries at all. And so the medical thing, and I know we're supposed to be the experts. We're supposed to tell people what's going to happen. I have no problem telling people I don't know when it comes to these medicals. We just don't know how every team is going to digest the not only what happened in college at Alabama with Tua, but also moving forward. Each team has a different appetite for risk. Each team has a different doctor with a different set of criteria of what work, the chances that they're willing to take medically. So it's just really tough to boil down exactly how the Dolphins at 5, the Chargers at 6, how do they specifically feel about Tua, and not only, the injuries that he had, but being able to stay healthy for a full 16, soon to be 17 game schedule. So, the greatest predictor of future injuries is past injuries. And I know a lot of people throughout the league really abide by that. And so it makes a guy like Tua, who's a top 5 talent. I think we all agree on that. It makes it really tough to project where he's going to go. And I don't think we're talking enough about just the possibility if he fell past 6, where does he go? It just makes it really tough because there's no obvious landing spots. You look at a team like the Jaguars at 9, that makes some sense. Gardner Minshew, they're going to let him be the guy for a year. But, maybe Tua's too good of a player to pass up on at that point in the draft. The Raiders at 12, maybe. I don't think Tampa, I think they're all in with Tom Brady the next year or two. So I don't think they would do that. So it makes it really tough to figure out exactly where Tua would end up if he gets out of that top 6.
Yeah, I've been saying that it's very likely one of those top quarterbacks does fall because of what you said there. There's no real obvious landing spot after the Chargers and after the Dolphins for a quarterback. But I want to kind of touch on the injury aspect, though, that you hit there in terms of how do you, in your rankings, account for injuries? Like you said, you try not to factor that in too much. And we here at PFF, we really won't alter at all, our evaluation of a guy based on maybe some injury history. How do you factor that, though, into yours?
It's a good question. It's really tough because we don't have all the information that obviously teams do. And, that's the biggest I think, disconnect between team boards and, all of us on the outside, because a player might have been a 4-year starter, didn't miss a game. And, we never even entered our minds that he would have an injury question, but he was flagged for an arthritic knee, or the shoulder is not going to hold up, or, and it's something that you don't find all this information out on every single player. I remember, 4 or 5 years ago now, when Jay Ajayi was coming out of Boise State, I remember I got some late information that the knee was a real issue, that teams were really worried about the longevity. And so I remember, we were talking about Jay Ajayi at that point as an early second-round player, and then I put that out there, and, Boise State fans hated me for a couple of years there, because he fell to the 5th round, and I was blamed for it. First of all, teams are not going to let him fall based off what anything I say. But I obviously got that information from a team who flagged the knee, and that was the worry with him. And so you don't know with each one of these players. A lot of times that could be the reason they fall. And, I find it important to include the medical information that I know of. But with that said, I'm sure there's plenty of medical information that we just don't have public access to.
Something else I found interesting about the 7-round mock draft you dropped, you have CeeDee Lamb, the Oklahoma wide receiver, going number 12 to the Las Vegas Raiders, the first receiver off the board. Niners picking up Henry Ruggs of Alabama, and then 2 picks later, Denver Broncos, Jerry Jeudy. A lot of people see Jeudy going maybe ahead of CeeDee Lamb and Henry Ruggs. Where are you right now with the receiver class? What are you hearing about those 3 specifically? All of those kind of in the same tier, wide receiver 1 potential, but where are you right now in terms of how the teams see this class, how the teams see the top of this receiver class?
Yeah, and it just comes down to preference. What are you looking for? I think each one of us could probably sell the other on one of these receivers, because they each offer something a little different. Jerry Jeudy, it's the route running, it's the break and balance skills, that start-stop ability to uncover. With Henry Ruggs, the explosive speed, his ability to, not only as a deep guy, but as someone after the catch. He makes it really tough for corners to stick with him. And then with CeeDee Lamb, the ball skills, the football IQ, just the natural ability he has as a ball handler, and then after the catch, he can make things happen. And so I think each one of those guys has something going for them that you can point to and say, well, that's why he should be the first receiver drafted. In this group, I think it's going to be interesting. I think we might see a little bit of movement here. I think there might, I keep hearing Denver as a possibility, as one of those teams that, John Elway's got his eye on a specific receiver. Wouldn't be shocked at all if we see Denver maybe move up 4 or 5 spots to get ahead of the Raiders at 12, to ensure that they get the receiver they're looking for, whether that's Lamb or Jeudy or whoever they like. So I think we might see a little bit of movement in, that 9 to 16, 17 range for, more than just the receivers. I think corner as well, but specifically the receivers. I think the teams are going to be jockeying for position to maybe get, because we see these guys as, there's 3 really good ones in the top tier, or, that's kind of how it's talked about. Teams don't necessarily see that the way we do. They have a favorite, or, they see a guy that they like above the rest. And so they're not afraid to go get him if they see that opportunity.
Man, I would just be floored in this wide receiver class to trade up to then take a wide receiver. But
yeah.
Crazy. They traded up for Sammy Watkins back in 2014. So crazier things have happened. All right, let's go to the cornerback class. So, because that's the more interesting one to me in this mock draft, where you see it that the NFL sees it a lot higher than probably the general public at this point, where you have Jeffrey Okudah going 3 to the Lions. You have CJ Henderson sneaking into the top 10 to number 9 for the Jaguars. Mm-hmm. You have Trayvon Diggs, then the next cornerback off the board to the Cowboys. AJ Terrell to the Raiders at 19, and then you have Jalen Johnson sneaking into the back end of the first round to the Chiefs at 32, and Christian Fulton falling all the way out of the first round. How do you see this cornerback class, personally? And do you really believe that guys like Trayvon Diggs, who people are saying might slip out of the first round entirely, could go in the middle? I know you're a little more plugged into the Cowboys than I.
This cornerback group it's a lot of fun, really. I think most people would agree Jeff Okudah at the top out of Ohio State. And then I think CJ Henderson, he was, I think, kind of the lead dog going into the combine as to be that number 2 corner. And then coming out of the combine, he put an exclamation point on that with the way he worked out, running the 4.3 at 6'1", 200 pounds. So I think that CJ Henderson has put himself into that top 10 mix. But, for me personally, I really like Jeff Gladney. He's my number 3 corner. But, I don't think teams necessarily share that. There are a lot of teams that like him, but, he's got the knee issue right now. That's something that could hurt him a little bit. But Gladney might be a mid-second round type of guy. The corner that I think is really intriguing a lot of teams, and frankly, I don't know that they know what to do with him, or they really are intrigued by him and they're not sure exactly what the right value is, and that's AJ Terrell from Clemson. 6'1", 195 pounds, ran a 4.42, and even though Jamar Chase in the national title game just abused him, the body of work is still there for Terrell. I mean, he has some good tape out there, and he has a projectable body. He's got the athletic skill set. Not a perfect prospect by any means, but the traits are very, very intriguing. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if AJ Terrell is closer to CJ Henderson than he is to, whoever's behind him in terms of being that next cornerback off the board. He could be in that top 15, top 17 mix. I think the Falcons are really interesting at 16. I could see them moving up for CJ Henderson to 9 or 10. The Browns, we know the Browns, they want out of that 10th spot. If the right value is there, they'd love to add a day 2 pick plus, get another tackle, later on in the mid to late first round. Ezra Cleveland from Boise State. That's who they've had their eye on. They've done a ton of work on him. Dallas at 17 is really interesting because they want K'Lavon Chaisson, but I don't think he's going to be there. They want CJ Henderson. I don't think he's going to be there. The next, few options you're looking at, I know they've got a pretty good grade on Diggs, and I know they like AJ Terrell. So, which one's going to be available for them? Could Terrell be off the board at that point? I think it's possible. I think you kind of hit on it. This cornerback class is it's a lot of fun because there's just so many different ways these guys can come off the board. We're going to see them go early. This first round is going to be about the offensive first the quarterbacks, then the offensive tackles, the wide receivers, and then the corners. Those 4 positions it's really going to make up the bulk of this first round.
I have 2 follow-ups off after that. With CJ Henderson, you have him going 9 in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Some are comparing him to Justin Gilbert, the former Cleveland Browns bust. People are afraid of his 2019 tape. Gave up a lot of yards compared to 2018 and 2019. So I'd love your opinion of CJ Henderson, how much weight you place in the production in 2019. And also, I'm currently writing up a piece on Jeff Gladney. I am a huge fan of Jeff Gladney. It's great to hear that you are as well. I'd love to get your breakdown of him, his scheme versatility, what he can do in different coverages, etc.
Yeah, and Henderson, I think he did take a step back as a junior, and I don't know how much of that was, kind of saving himself, or how much of that was into his thought process about maybe not, looking towards the NFL already. But there were two areas where I just wish CJ Henderson was better, and that's being a playmaker at the catch point. I think he has the athletic skill where he can attach himself to routes and, run up and down the field and cover these guys. It's just, I wish he did a better job finding the football and being a playmaker at the catch point. And then also just a better tackler. I don't need my corners to be, all pro tacklers. Just, you have to get your guy on the ground to be, you can't be a liability in that area. And Henderson at times was a liability. So I think those 2 areas are where, it bothers me with Henderson, but still, I think there's a lot of talent there that you can work with. Still a very young player. Talking to some of his high school coaches, they thought he was actually a better track athlete than a football athlete coming out of high school. So there's just a lot of ability there with Henderson. I think that's what teams are willing to bet on. And then, Gladney, you just look at the production that he had the last 4 years. He had more passes defended than he did starts at TCU. And in my experience, just looking at the raw stats, passes defended is one of those stats that translates fairly well to the next level, in my experience. If you can get your hand on the football as a defensive back, chances are you're going to be able to do that at the NFL level. And Gladney, I think him and Amik Robertson are the only 2 corners the last 2 years in college football who had over 15 passes defended each of the last 2 years. So 2 guys that with the proven ball production that I think will translate to the next level.
Yeah, I'm looking at Gladney right now. I mean, over the past 4 years, only 3 other cornerbacks in college football have been tested more from a target standpoint. And this guy has a ton of ball production, high forced incompletion percentage. And with PFF, we've seen that one of the more predictive or sticky stats is forced incompletion percentage, or that ball production you speak to. I think Gladney is a super productive player across a very large sample size. All right, we want to finish with this. We want to talk about the safety class. Compare Jeremy Chin, the Southern Illinois safety, to Kyle Duggar, the other small school prospect from Lenore Rhine, and talk to me about Xavier McKinney of Alabama and Brandt Delpit of LSU falling into the second round in your latest mock draft.
Yeah, this safety class, I think I could poke holes in each one of them that, really bothers me, and why me personally, I don't have a first round grade on a safety this year. Xavier McKinney, I think, is a really good run defender, really smart player. He understands football geometry. But I can't get the South Carolina tape out of my mind, where his struggles with the spacing relationship and coverage was a big issue. Brian Edwards was able to create his own separation. There was another, can't remember the receiver's name, but he was able to. That South Carolina tape, it gives me pause with McKinney in terms of his coverage ability. He's not a bad athlete. It's just he needs to get better if he's going to be relied upon to be, a true starter at the next level. But I still think he's the top safety option this draft has to offer. Brandt Delpit, it's kind of the opposite. He has the cover awareness. He has the range. It's just the tackling ability is something that you really worry about. It's something that there will be some teams, some of these coaches that value tackling safeties, the last line of defense. If they can't trust you, they're not going to draft you. And there'll be some teams that just want nothing to do with Brandt Delpit because of those tackling issues. And so it's something that can be fixed. It's coachable. I think his tackling issues are more fundamental than an effort or a want to issue. So many times he's leaving his feet before he needs to. He's not calming his feet and wrapping and finishing. And so I think it's fixable, but there's no guarantee that he'd be able to do that. The 2 small school guys you mentioned, Duggar and Chin, 2 really interesting players who I think went to the Senior Bowl and they didn't look out of place. They did a solid job. Duggar is more of, I think, your box guy. Some teams have him on the board as a linebacker, 6'1", 217 pounds, a really smooth athlete. Really liked how he covers tight ends and backs out of the backfield, like his range. He's a long player. So you see him able to detach from blocks and scrape and get to the football. Chin is, I think, more of your versatile, rangy player. He's got corner experience. Actually started 3 games at corner last year as a junior. And a guy that's 6'3", 220 pounds, there's just a lot of things working for him. Had at least 3 picks in every single season that the last 4 years at Southern Illinois. So you do worry about the competition level, but there's no question that there's a lot going for him and a good chance he ends up somewhere in the top 50 picks.
Dane, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's always a pleasure, always super insightful. Where can people find your work if they want to follow you through this pre-draft process and after the draft?
Yeah, everything can be found at The Athletic and on my Twitter feed at DP Brugler. And like I said, the draft guide, I appreciate all the kind words. It's that's really my baby and something that's a year-round process for me. So I promise that you will not be disappointed by it if you check it out. So hopefully everyone does.
Awesome stuff, Dane. Thanks.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is new PFFer, Seth Galina. He's now a PFF member and analyst with us, a content contributor with us. Great to have you on, Seth.
Hey, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Recently, thanks for asking.
Talk to me about, Seth. Talk to me about, we met in Mobile. We had you on the podcast. For those who've been listening to the podcast for a while, we had you on the podcast in Mobile. Little did they know it was the workings of potentially bringing you on here at PFF. Talk to me about your background, your decision to join PFF, and all of that.
Well, I think it all started. I watched Austin order the most vile meal at Waffle House in Mobile, and I was like, "This is the guy I need to work with." And then it was history, really. No, I've been around football for a long time. I played it in high school. I did not stand a chance to play it in college, so I started coaching right away. And then I started writing about it, mostly about my favorite teams, LSU and the Saints. Ended up coaching at a relatively high level, university football in Canada, college football in Canada. And then you guys seem to take a liking to me. So here I am.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we're glad to have you on. You've already put out some great content. Talk to me about this Ja'Marr Chase piece. Getting some good feedback on social. I know a lot of the people here at PFF loved it. Talk to me about the Ja'Marr Chase piece, what you learned there, and then what also you're working on with PFF now.
Well, I think with the Ja'Marr Chase piece, I guess we all watched so much LSU, whether you're just doing, looking at draft eligible guys because there's so many on that offense, or just watching them because of how good the offense was. We all watched them. And one of the things that stood out to me was how often they were in trips. I mean, they weren't in 2x2 formations a lot, but they were in 3x1 formations a ton, and they didn't really move their guys around a lot. So Ja'Marr Chase, their ex-receiver, was pretty much always that ISO'd receiver on that side. And if you watch like an NFL game, you'll see guys move around a lot more than just be like, okay, you're our best receiver. You're going to play on this side, as a one receiver, like high school football, like certain levels of college football. And LSU did that. So I was like, okay, well, as I'm watching it throughout the year, I'm like, okay, something's not right. It's not, it's not cookie cutter enough. I'm seeing something that's a little different. And I thought that they would line up Chase a little more inside than a normal team would. And when you think about trips alignments, you think about a receiver, usually a tall guy. I'm thinking in my head, I'm thinking about AJ Green right now. So he's like the prototypical X receiver. He's tall, he's fast, he goes up, he can make contested catches. And he's lined up, outside where the numbers are on the football field. So he's pretty wide, he's near the sideline, he runs go balls, he runs slants. So what LSU did was they said, okay, Ja'Marr Chase is not necessarily that type of receiver. He's obviously an elite player, but he's not AJ Green, he's not Julio Jones type of player. So they moved him in a bit. And then with Timo, I asked, Timo has all his data about formational data. So I asked him, like, was that true? Did they move him in more than other college receivers? And the answer was about 3 yards on average closer to the quarterback than any other receiver. And what this allowed them to do was to kind of use Chase's, route running skill to run not just go routes, but now outbreaking patterns. So they ran a lot of corners, a lot of deep outs. And this allowed them to get into one of my favorite pass concepts, which I call smash drive, or some people call it shallow cross, whatever you want to call it. So it allowed Burrow to work a real concept to his number one receiver side of the field, and usually, corner and then the running back out in the flat to create a high-low on the cornerback. So instead of just saying, like, okay, we're just going to run a go, and if the go's not there, we're going to come back, there's an actual concept here that he can read, and he has kind of answers for, rather than just a one-man route by their ex-receiver. And it was great. I mean, they ran that so much out of trips. They still ran the go routes, but again, because he was lined up so far inside, he had a lot of room to the sideline to work, an outside release, and then still have space before he runs himself out of bounds. And then I think my main thing was, one of the reasons this all could work and they could just line him up, more inside, was because they did have in breaking routes from him. And usually that was in the form of how they ran their RPOs. So they would run a 5-step inside breaking route, inside slant. I call it a glance post, instead of the 5-step outside breaking corner route that they would run on their drop back passes. So, the first 5 steps for Chase, if you're a cornerback or a safety, they look exactly the same, but instead he's breaking inside or outside. And, to be able to cut your split down from the X receiver and then still be able to run that RPO that a lot of teams do run, you see Alabama run it a lot, get an inside move and still have the space for Burrow to throw that ball in there. That's what made that was kind of like the last piece of the puzzle and made the whole thing go. So that's kind of what I was looking at throughout the whole season. And then obviously my priors were confirmed with the data, and that's always a good feeling.
So I have 2 sort of follow-ups to all of that. First one, who do you see being that guy for the Carolina Panthers? They just signed Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel on the roster. Who is their Jamar Chase in those 3x1 sets?
Well, I like one of the receivers they just signed yesterday named Christian McCaffrey. I think he's a really good receiver for them. I don't know. I think it could be Robbie. He does allow you to have that speed down the field that you still want from an X receiver. I'm a big Robbie fan. I do think he probably gives you more value from the slot with that speed. But I think they'll try out a couple guys there.
Okay. So not just one like they did with Chase. It'll probably be rotational.
This is the thing when you talk about Brady going to Carolina. I think we talked about it actually in Mobile, like how different. Like LSU was really simple last year in offense. It was one personnel grouping, and Chase was always lined up as ISO receiver, for like 90% of the snaps. They would move the tight end back and forth. There wasn't a lot of formation and there wasn't a lot of concepts. And I don't know if you could do that in the NFL. I mean, you brought up a good point, which is like, the kind of like the McVay coaching tree and stuff where he's not doing so much, but it's still more than LSU. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Brady's going to have to get creative, and I don't know. Is it going to look more like the actual, Sean Payton, New Orleans Saints offense, or is it going to look more like the thing Brady did last year with a lot of RPOs and what I just talked about? I'm not sure.
Interesting. All right. And then the second follow-up, I guess, was what do you think of Jamar Chase? This is a Rookies and Drafts podcast. What kind of prospect is he? You said he's not Julio Jones or AJ Green. How good actually is he then, in your eyes? Don't be a homer.
Yeah, I know. He just has the first thing is do you find, I don't know if you guys have watched so much of him. I'm sure he pops off when you're watching everyone else on LSU, but he's got a kind of a weird gait to his running style. Like his gait is a little weird, but that's kind of like aesthetically what pops out to me. But he's just, they tried to press him the whole season and he just dominated against the press. And you guys talk about that a lot. Like, can you win against press coverage in college? Because that's something that translates, and he absolutely can. Like, they pressed him all the time, and he dominated. I think he had the most. I think I put in the article like most targets or most catches, most yards, most touchdowns against press coverage. Totally unstoppable. He has this really nice like two-hand swipe when he gets pressed. I think he totally destroyed Diggs from Alabama on that move, and then ran a go route down the sideline. So he's phenomenal against press coverage. Crafty route runner. I don't know if as crafty as like his running mate, Justin Jefferson, but like still very, very crafty, great, at the top of his breaks and everything like that. I will say, with Scott Linehan coming in as the passing game coordinator at LSU, I think it'll be interesting to see where they do line him up this season. You could see him a lot more in the slot, just because if Linehan brings that, okay, well, in the NFL, we move people around, like I talked about. Maybe Chase, we see more Chase routes from the slot, not necessarily just from the X receiver. And then it'll be interesting to see like what kind of routes you can run from those areas too.
What else are you working on? I think the Jamar Chase piece was great, a great first edition to PFF.com from you. But I know on early Tuesday morning, you had a piece come out on Mississippi State, Mike Leach bringing that to the SEC. And what else are you working on?
Yeah, so I was really curious about Mike Leach coming back to the SEC. He was the OC for Hal Mumme in the late 90s at Kentucky when they kind of, stormed that league with the air raid and all those passing concepts. And now he's back. The roster doesn't really set up for much success there. They did get KJ Costello, the former Stanford quarterback, in there. Yeah. And so they got him in there. But one of the things that I really wanted to look at and what the article is about is because the ex-Hawaii head coach, Nick Rolovich, is now taking over at Washington State, and he comes with the run and shoot. And, I wanted to look this up for myself because I'm not an expert in either of those two offenses and like kind of what the difference are. Because yes, both the teams throw the ball a lot. I'm sure you guys have both watched, Anthony Gordon when you guys looking at draft prospects, and you've also watched my quarterback one, Cole McDonald, when you're watching when you're watching the draft prospects. So, you see those two offenses. Yeah, they throw the ball a ton. I think both of them they're 1 and 2 in total dropbacks last season. But like, what really are the differences, and what do kind of Mississippi State fans are they going to expect from their offense, and what Washington State fans will expect? Because again, Washington State is still going to be among the top 3 teams that throw in the football, but it's going to look completely different, in my opinion, than what they've used to over the past, I think, 7-8 years now under Leach. The other thing I'm working on right now is, again, going back to my homeboy KJ Costello. I'm ranking the top 4, maybe top 5 grad transfer quarterbacks. I say maybe top 5 because getting to 5 it's been rough. I think right now I have former Arkansas, former Texas A&M quarterback Nick Starkel as my number 5. So,
oh my gosh,
we're getting into the weeds here a little bit, but yeah, that's really fun. You have
where's Derek King on that list? Where's Derek King on that list?
He's number 1. Yeah, there was no doubt for me, and then just because of how good. I mean, we have him graded as like 92. His overall grade of 92 in 2018. Obviously, he fell off a cliff last year under Holgorsen. But if you get that type of play out of him in Miami's that's a good sign for Miami going forward. And then you have guys like Peyton Ramsey, Costello, like I said, Jamie Newman, Felipe Franks, another great SEC quarterback, Jake Bentley. So you have those guys. Trying to rank them, trying to use my analytical tools to rank Nick Starkel and Felipe Franks. It's been a rough morning, actually.
I feel for you there. Let's get to this year's class, though. Let's get to the actual draft. Back to the point of the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast. We have our rankings. They just dropped on PFF's website at the quarterback position. Give me yours. So we know Joe Burrow is tied at number 1 with Cole McDonald.
Yeah.
Who comes off the board after that for you? Just break it. Just go down just go through the top 5 here, just in a row, and break it down for us.
So I do think there's a difference between like who goes off the board and then who do I think can play quarterback in the NFL.
Yes, that's what I want.
Because, yeah. So like, Tua probably goes as a second quarterback. I'm a big fan of his. I think the 2018 tape will tell you more about Tua than the 2019 tape. And I say that just because I think when I look at the 2 offenses that he ran, and so you have Mike Locksley was the OC in 2018, and then Steve Sarkisian comes in 2019. And when you look at Alabama's offense in 2019, I mean, it's wild. It's just shot play after shot play after shot play. I think every 4 snaps there's a sluggo by like a receiver in there. Like they're just throwing the ball down the field. And like, honestly, why not? Like you have this incredible group of receivers. You're playing against guys, future like accountants of the world at safety. Like, yeah, you're going to throw the ball down the field. Did it show off Tua in more of an NFL setting? No. But if you look at the 2018 tape, not that there weren't shot plays in the 2018 tape, but there probably still a lot more plays where you had to make some reads over the middle of the field, on dig routes and shallow routes, stuff like that. So I think you're going to get a good feel for Tua in that year. And he was great that year. I mean, he was great in 2019 before the injuries, but I think you're getting a guy, if you take Tua, that is really polished and he understands how to get through his reads. I think we looked at, or I looked at what we call next read, which is kind of like the quarterback's ability to reset his feet to the backside of a play and deliver the ball accurately. And Tua doesn't grade very highly there, which was surprising to me because he does like look like a guy who knows how to do that, just aesthetically. So that was a little concerning, but I think overall, I mean, he's still like an elite prospect at that position.
Where are you right now with Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Jake Fromm, these other guys that are kind of like the tier after Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa? Do you have a favorite in that group? I know the third quarterback on PFF Sport is Justin Herbert, but where do you stand with that right now?
I think he'll come off the board as the third quarterback. I don't think he can play. Like honestly, he can't play. He's late on every throw. Like if he throws to his first read, like okay, it's fine, I guess. But he's late on every throw. I think the stat that Mike put out the other day about, just looking at throws to just open receivers, and he just misses them like once every 5 throws. I mean, that's terrible. So, the accuracy is not there. The ability to process and play quarterback is not there. Everyone's going to point to the Oregon receivers not being good. And sure, like maybe against man coverage, they could get open or whatever. But like against zone, Herbert shows no ability to understand what's going on and to get to the receiver with adequate timing, and then with adequate accuracy. It doesn't happen. So I just don't. And for me, him and Easton are the same quarterback. For some reason, one of them is going to be picked in the first round, and one of them is going to be picked, in the 4th or 5th or 3rd, whatever it is. I'm not really sure. I mean, Easton. The thing with Easton is the absolute like porous play under pressure that is not as apparent with Herbert, but at the same time, but just like as quarterbacks, they're the same. They both are super late on their throws. The accuracy is terrible, but they get picked in the draft because they're tall and they look good, I guess. He's got nice long hair, Justin Herbert.
Where are you with?
Just get through the top 5 then. We got.
Okay, yeah. So Love will be the next quarterback. Love is funny to me because I think that he probably gets it more than a guy like Herbert. And I like something about Love that I like is that he plays it with a kind of an arrogance where he's like, you see a few throws where he's like, yeah, I'm going to pump this defender this way because it's going to open up something on the backside. And then he pumps it and he comes to the backside and he's, oh yeah. And then there's a defender there and he throws an interception. It's like, well, come on, dude. So like,
it is kind of crazy.
So like, but I do like that kind of arrogance. It just like, he doesn't put it all together. I think one of the funny things about Love is all the interceptions this year that came on the same part of the field. Like just cornerbacks undercutting an outside receiver to the far side of the field. And I think it's always to his right, if I'm not mistaken. Like just like, quick outs, speed outs to the sideline, hooks to the sideline. He's getting undercut the whole time. So he's late on everything. His eyes are a little bouncy, like he'll go from there to there to there to there, back, right back. And that's not great. But his game against San Diego State, which I think is a pretty good, marker because San Diego State's a good, team in that conference.
Go Aztecs.
Yeah, he throws a ball to a cornerback or a safety, I don't remember, like he's wont to do. But that game showed me like, okay, there's something there. Like the footwork was good, the timing was good, the accuracy was there. It's just like, it's all about consistency, and he doesn't show that enough. But that's kind of the thing where I stick to it. I'm like, oh, there's a quarterback there. I see a quarterback there. I just don't think it happens enough. And one of the things that I think you guys have shown is like, if you're a guy who throws the ball to the other team a lot in college, you're probably going to be that guy in the NFL. And you can't have that. You just like, as much as the big plays are there with Love, you can't turn the ball over like he does.
Two more guys I need your takes on here. Jake Fromm of Georgia and Jalen Hertz, Oklahoma. Where are you at with these two? How do you feel about them on day 2, day 3 type of prospects?
I mean, I think that Hertz is funny. He's very slow, but maybe that's more of a deliberateness. If I'm being positive about it, he's very deliberate. He takes his time with things. Obviously, he's fast in terms of his running ability, but in the pocket, he's kind of slow. But his accuracy grades for us are elite, which I was surprised about because that wasn't really the case in Alabama, and the season kind of didn't go like maybe. Oklahoma fans would have thought it went after the first half of last year in Norman. So I was like, oh, that's surprising that the accuracy is so good. I think Lincoln Riley obviously gets people open for him. But, with that said, I mean, accuracy is accuracy, and he's putting the ball where it needs to be most of the time. The reads could be polished, but I don't think he's as bad. If you're looking for a guy who can go, a guy who played a lot of college football, but that got better playing college football is Jalen Hertz, as opposed to someone like Justin Herbert, who played a lot of college football and then was not getting better throughout those 3-4 years in college. And then Fromm is honestly, he's brilliant. Fromm he's like a beautiful mind. He's not a pro football player. That's the problem. Like the arm is just not good enough. The athletic ability, he can't add anything with his feet, but he's absolutely brilliant. Especially like he does stuff. I've seen there's 2 plays that I watched recently. One against Notre Dame when they played them in Athens, where he has some sort of mesh concept, and basically what ends up happening is he needs to get about 4 yards. It's like 3rd and 4. So he has the running back on a swing, and he has a receiver coming to that same side, but he's starting from the backside on a little shallow cross. And you just see his head, like he knows, like, look, he's got to read one defender, the flat guy to that side. And he's like, hey, I can throw it to the running back, and, it's DeAndre Swift, and maybe he makes a man miss, and we get the first down, but I'm throwing it to him at, -2 air yards, 2 yards before the line of scrimmage, and he's going to have to make a play. So you see him just move his head and his eyes a little bit, and you just see once that flat defender moves one step outside, he resets his feet and fires that crossing route, gets 5 yards, it gets the first down, and it's like, wow, that's really good stuff. And then there's another one against LSU where he's like looking guys off just for a second, and then he comes back and resets his feet and throws a slant route against LSU. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. That's so cool. And it's like, okay, but you gained a total of 8 yards on those 2 plays. So it's like, yeah, it's great. He's really, really smart. But like, I don't know if you can play in the NFL at that with that lack of kind of overall athletic ability.
Do you draft him to be your QB coach then at that point?
Yeah, he's going to
QB coach draft pick.
Yeah,
Kellen Moore.
He's going to go the Mike Kafka route, and yeah.
All right, I want to wrap with this. I want to wrap with this. I know you've watched a little bit of the grad transfer QBs, some of the guys in the 2021 class, but we had a conversation on Monday about Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence. Mike is still all in on Trevor Lawrence. Where are you with those 2 quarterback prospects right now, and in terms of how much you've watched and what they look like right now?
I'll start with saying that I haven't watched as much Fields, especially from the game tape. I have watched him on TV a lot last year. With that said, that could, my mind could change when I do watch the field stuff, but Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback that I've seen in a long time. In terms of a prospect, Burrow had the best season for a player in a long time, but he also did it at 27 years old, and he already had a master's degree, so it's a little different. Lawrence coming in as a true freshman, and we gave him like a 90+ grade. The grade did go down last year. I think he's forcing the ball. You could see it all over his tape. Like the first half of the season, there's I'm Trevor Lawrence, I could throw this ball, and he just shouldn't have. And then when he calmed down, the end of the year, he's elite again until he goes against that buzzsaw of Dave Aranda defense in the national championship. But Trevor is he's unbelievable. Honestly, he's unbelievable. One of the most efficient movers in the pocket that I've seen. Understands already. We're talking about, most of the stuff I've watched the 2019 tape, but a lot of the stuff that I think about is from the 2018 tape, where he's a true freshman and he still is able to understand timing and anticipation. And like I said, the pocket movement was there from the beginning. I think there's some stuff he could do to improve mechanically, and maybe that'll help his accuracy. He does dip the ball a little bit. So there's not like super proximal movements there. But with that said, he's still, the best prospect that I think since Luck, and maybe in a long, long time.
Yeah, Lawrence had this one play. I don't know if you remember this in the national championship game against Alabama, where I think he's working like the right side of the field, and Alabama's bringing a blitz from the backside. It was the boundary side, and he, as soon as he brings his head back, sees the blitz, and then without even like looking to the flat, just throws the ball towards his running back on that side, knowing that like that's the guy who's hot. Like the guy, as soon as he saw the blitz, I think he overthrew the running back, but just like the quickness to see the blitz, and then like without even taking another like split second to process, the ball was just going to that running back.
It's like guys who understand, and you saw that a lot from Burrow this year. It's like guys who understand how the entire defensive structure changes with one person's movement. Mm-hmm. So like, okay, well he's coming there, and then that means that other things have to happen, and I can speed up my process that way. And that's kind of, I agree, that's where Trevor he stands out.
Yeah.
All right, Seth, really appreciate you having you on, man. It was great to get you on the podcast. We'll have to do more of this after the draft and in the season. Now that you're a full-time PFFer, really appreciate your work.
Thanks, guys. Speak to you soon.